Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's program. Thank you for joining us from all over the world, from the north to the south, east to the west, at our 2022 annual International Rating webinar. I am Dr. Wens Mwoga, Head Compliance and Consulting at DataPro. I am also a development economist, and I will be your moderator and coordinator of this 2022 annual International Rating webinar. This is a global event, and we are reaching you from Nigeria. Hence, we will commence with the national anthem. Okay, thank you. Once again, welcome. And next on our program is opening prayer. And the opening prayer will be said by Pastor Olufemi Obaweya. Pastor Obaweya, please, the opening prayer.
Thank you very much, Doctor. Shall we all pray? Father in heaven, we want to thank you for preserving us for another year. Thank you, Lord, for despite the challenges in the economic and social sphere, you have proven yourself as always to be the Almighty God. We are mindful to give you thanks. This afternoon, we are gathered from all over the world, various race and creed, but under one platform to see the advancement of the human race, even in economic sphere. Thank you for all the giftings available on this platform, all the deliberations and everything that will go on, we commit into your hands. And we ask, oh God, that at the end of it all, there will be meaningful conclusions and platforms to build on for the future. And we will be mindful to always give you the glory. In the precious name of our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ, I pray. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Pastor Olufemi Obaweya, for the opening prayer. Before we proceed, I would like to take you through the program, and we intend to be here for about 1.5 hours. Okay, the next will be an opening remark by the moderator. Next following will be the welcome address by the MD, DataPro. Then we will have goodwill message, followed by keynote address. And then we have the trending issues, followed by panel discussion. Then following will be the Q&A, question and answers. So at this stage, we would like to encourage everyone to please make generous use of the chat box and the Q&A box. We will take those questions during the panel discussion. After that, we will have our closing remarks and then closing prayer, and the program will come to an end, about 1.5 hours. Okay, right. The opening remark, I will take it now. We know that across the world, infrastructure is very key. As a matter of fact, it is the pillar that drives economic growth and development. And it couldn't have come at a better time. This kind of webinar is going to open the space for all stakeholders. Therefore, DataPro, as its initiative, has assembled professionals across the world, has brought in people from the private sector and the public sector. Therefore, they will be x-raying all the issues, bringing out the benefit and the value propositions. And it is on this note, I would like to bring in the MD of DataPro, Mr. Abimbola Adeshoju, a man who has really blazed the trail, who has set the pace at various endeavors. And in credit rating, he's also redefining the space. So please join me in welcoming Mr. Abimbola Adeshoju, the MD CEO of DataPro, the global credit rating agency.
Thank you, Dr. Wentz. Good day, everybody from all over the world. It's my honor and privilege to welcome everybody to the 2022 edition of our annual credit rating webinar. This event is a continuation of our collective efforts at promoting the value proposition of credit rating as an unbiased and efficient way of allocating resources within the capital market, which we believe ultimately will result in economic growth and national prosperity, which Nigeria needs right now. DataPro is still being viewed by some as a relatively young company when it comes to credit rating. However, we were licensed in 2004. That's like 18 years ago. So it's very safe to say we have come a long way. We have been in the market long enough to understand that it's time for a paradigm shift in the way things are done. If we truly want to expand the market and create better and more opportunities and options for stakeholders and the generality of investors, entrepreneurs, companies, and operators alike. We must therefore be very hopeful for a better tomorrow of efficient services that will meet international standards. We have all witnessed the information age. We are now in the digital era where technology, partnership, and cooperation define and drive business transformation. And these three critical components, technology, partnership, and collaboration, have transformed DataPro to what we are today. In terms of technology, we have leveraged on technology for knowledge, for skills acquisition, and for new ideas and better ways of doing things. We have invested heavily in machine learning, in big data and artificial intelligence to set world-class standards for ourselves in our processes and services. And this explains the strategic alliance that we have with Mode Finance. We are very, very happy with the alliance and the partnership that we have with Mode Finance. Mode Finance is Europe's first fintech rating agency, and with their expertise and their global acceptance, we have been able to make our results and our reports very universal, transparent, and accountable to all our clients. Our alliance with Mode Finance has also led to the introduction of the first rating as a service product, which is called Tigran for Data Pro, into the Nigerian market. This product, we believe, is going to revolutionize the credit risk management landscape in Nigeria and offer issuers, investment bank, and traditional users in their credit risk management. In continuation of our strive for mutually beneficial partnership, we've also joined forces with IRA. IRA is a credit rating based in Bahrain and is set up primarily to provide independent assessment for issuers and issues that conform to the principles of Islamic finance, with special focus on development. We are very happy and proud of this partnership as it opens another vista of opportunities to investors within our markets and within our country that can benefit from the value addition of Sukuk and other innovative products and services. The world is a global village, so we need to continue to collaborate and cooperate so that we can bring value to our country and standardize the way we do things to meet international benchmark. And that is part of why we strongly support the idea of a Pan-African Association of Credit Rating Agencies, that we make sure that those of us operating from this part of the world can collectively do things as equals to those in the Western world. We are all gathered today with all our partners, which they're going to be properly introduced by Dr. Wens. You can see our distinguished partners from IRA, the president, Brother Fahim. Can also see a partner from the Middle East Operational Office, Christian, who is the president of Mode International. And all our guest speakers, our regulator, who has supported us immensely in putting this together. Our distinguished panelists, we welcome you all. We believe this will be an enjoyable session, and we continue to promote Nigeria in better light to the rest of the world, and to bring in new converts and introduce the greater percentage of Nigerians to the capital market as a very powerful tool for economic development. Enjoy your time. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Abimbola Adishoyoju, the Managing Director, Chief Executive Officer of DataPro Limited, a quintessential and astute professional who has redefined several landscapes. Okay, now it is time for us to move to the goodwill messages. We will call our special guests, beginning with Mr. Lamido Yuguda. Malam Yuguda is the Director General of Securities and Exchange Commission.
No, just leave it.
And as a matter of fact, their presence today in this program has really redefined and established the importance of this program, being the regulator of the capital markets as well as credit rating agencies, shows that this program is very significant to economic growth and development of the country. Malam Lamido Yuguda is ably represented by Mr. Ibrahim Boyi, the Executive Commissioner, Corporate Services, Securities and Exchange Commission. I now call on Mr. Boyi to please deliver the goodwill messages on behalf of Malam Lamido Yuguda.
All right, good afternoon. The presenter, good afternoon, Mr. The CEO of Data Pro, Mr. Bimbola Adesoyoju, other invited guests and special guests present. My name is Ibrahim Boyi, and I'm delivering the paper for Mr. Lamido Yuguda, the Director General of the Securities and Exchange Commission, who unavoidably could not be at this event because of some, I'm sure for some of you that know, there's an investment forum going on in Gombe, and Lamido Yuguda happens to come from Gombe. So it's a very important event that he needs to physically be there in attendance. So, but it's not because he has any lesser rating for this event, but I think it's just that unfortunately he couldn't be in two places at the same time. So I have his paper. I will deliver it on his behalf. This shows how ready he was actually to be present here. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. It gives me great pleasure to deliver a goodwill message at this year's annual International Rating webinar with the theme, Boosting Infrastructural Development, the Role of Credit Rating Agencies. Let me start by commending Data Pro Limited for coming up with this important webinar aimed at addressing the factors responsible for Nigeria's stunted growth in terms of infrastructural development gaps. The theme of the webinar is timely and relevant in the discourse of issues pertinent to the growth and advancement of the Nigerian capital market, and indeed the national economy as a whole. Infrastructure is the livelihood of any economy, as no economy can grow and develop without a reasonable stock of critical infrastructure in transportation, energy, water, sanitation, and communication, amongst others. Where infrastructure is inadequate or ineffective, growth is affected and people's standard of living is negatively impacted. In Nigeria, challenges posed by traditional funding sources make capital markets increasingly the preferred way to finance infrastructure. We have seen this preference by both the federal and state governments on various bond issuance programs within the last few years. In early recognition of the importance of infrastructure finance through the capital market, the Securities and Exchange Commission has made concerted efforts bonds, social bonds, securitization, and infrastructure funds, which are capable of attracting large long-term investments from the international markets. There is no doubt that the role of credit rating agencies in assessing the credit risk of issuers and their instruments in infrastructure finance cannot be overemphasized. They provide an independent evaluation of the creditworthiness of debt securities issued by governments and corporates to enable investors have informed decisions. The webinar promises to be exciting, and I'm confident that experts gathered here will evoke the interest and attention of participants and enhance their knowledge on the subject matter to eventually lead to the birth of more infrastructure-related products in the capital market. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, let me assure you that the SEC is always ready to provide the required support to the relevant stakeholders of the Nigerian capital market as we jointly explore ways of simplifying processes that encourage optimal infrastructure financing and expansionary measures. I enjoy relevant professionals to think innovatively on best ways to leverage infrastructure financing through the capital market for socio-economic development. I urge you all to take full advantage of this thought-provoking webinar to learn from the financing and development challenges and to contribute towards accelerating infrastructural development in Nigeria. Once again, I congratulate the board, management, and staff of Data Pro Credit Rating Agency for their professionalism and commitment to ethical capital markets. I wish you all fruitful deliberations. Thank you and God bless. On behalf of Lamid Oyuguda, Director General, Securities and Exchange Commission. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ibrahim Boyi, Executive Commissioner, Corporate Services, SEC. On behalf of the Director General, Securities and Exchange Commission, Malam Lamido Yuguda. Thank you very much. Okay, now we will move on to the next goodwill message. And this time, we would like to call on Mr. A.B. Okaro, the Director General, Nigeria Governors Forum. Mr. Okaro has delivered a lot of strategic backing to subnationals, various states and governors, even having left a major mark within the regulatory compliance. And this time, he also has so much contribution he's making across the states. Please join me in welcoming Mr. A.B. Okaro, the DG Nigeria Governors Forum.
Good afternoon, and thank you, Program Moderator and Coordinator, Dr. Nwonga. Is that right?
Correct.
Sorry about that.
Correct.
Yeah. Yes. And thank you, every other person present. This webinar is particularly important to us, and where the Chief Executive spoke to me about it, I told him I would want to be personally present. I mean, that's exactly why I'm here. I have a prepared speech, but beyond the prepared speech, I sincerely would want the Nigerian Governors Forum to partner with the organization of this, because it's pivotal to taking our states to the next level and by extension our country. It's my pleasure to be part of this year's International Rating webinar organized by Data Pro to support one of the key instruments and incentives of infrastructure financing. As a forum, this gathering is important to us, not just because of Nigeria's high infrastructure deficit, but because the capital market is still largely untapped for state governments in the country, with less than a quarter of them participating in the market annually. We are concerned by the extent of infrastructure neglect, given that many of our cities have been overwhelmed by the rapid rise of urban agglomeration as more people continue to migrate from rural to urban areas. State governments have a major role to play in closing this gap by financing areas that are not exactly bankable and capable of sufficiently mobilizing private finance through public-private partnerships and through regulations required to attract and promote the growth of untapped private finance. States already see the urgency of this intervention because of the great demand for immediate tangible results from the populace. Last year, all 36 state governments spent a total of 2.2 trillion naira in capital expenditure compared to 3.1 trillion naira expended by the federal government. This provides a good perspective of the role of states as we untie the theme, boosting infrastructural development, the role of credit rating agencies. The timing of this webinar provides an opportunity to prepare for the new set of governments that will emerge from the 2023 general elections. Gubernatorial elections will be held in 28 states with 17 governors and deputy governors not returning. It is an inflection point for any new reform that the subsector needs, especially as we look in terms of the set of laws, institutions, and practices that enable efficient and effective access to finance. This convention will not be complete without talking about the importance of progress on revenue sustainability and debt management. We note the trend in federation revenues of states, which make up 65% of their total recurrent expenditure, and the increasing risk of a deteriorating exchange rate. These challenges continue to highlight the importance of revenue diversification and domestic resource mobilization in the country. To supplement the practice of credit rating, we can do more on risk mitigation and credit enhancement, including perhaps creating co-guarantee platforms that would help develop and deploy innovative instruments to de-risk private sector investments at scale. Some work has been initiated in this regard. In November 2019, the National Economic Council, NEC, which is the highest economic advisory body in the country, set up a committee to consider how a portion of accumulated pension funds can be leveraged for infrastructure investments in collaboration with the Nigerian Sovereign Investment Authority and NSI. The objective is to leverage the pension fund assets under management through a national infrastructure investment fund to fund essential infrastructure projects that will complement projects implemented under the Presidential Infrastructure Development Fund. The success of this initiative still depends on building strong investor confidence that would also help build new asset classes. Looking broadly, outside the confines of the country, we have observed the credit rating posturing in Africa. The African Union this year has moved for the creation of an African credit rating agency because of the continuous exaggeration of the risks of investing in Africa by international rating agencies. We know that credit rating remains a highly influential tool used by investors in their allocation of capital. So we understand the need to build our own credit rating system to provide complementary rating opinions for credit infrastructure in Nigeria. In the light of this, we are willing to support platforms such as this by providing greater access to our governors to actively engage to strengthen the role of credit agencies. This is important because unlike international rating agencies, local rating agencies have greater coverage of small and medium enterprises and local jurisdictions beyond the country level focus. In delivering any support, we recognize the important role of the Central Bank of Nigeria, the Securities and Exchange Commission, and the National Pension Commission in setting and enhancing standards and enforcing standards. Fortunately, we are already addressing the opaqueness and lack of transparency that may have long plagued the assessment of risk structures and the infrastructure market in general. Last month, we launched the country's first open source database of the physical data of all 36 state governments of the Federation. The portal, which is what you have here, is a secured portal, https://publicfinance.ngf.org.ng // host comparable annual data on government spending, revenues, and financing in all states, and it features hundreds of performance indicators that measure the quality of delivery in the country. Today's webinar is a start for a collaboration between the NGF and this community. I look forward to a productive session and the outcomes today. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you, Mr. A.B. Okaro, the Director General, Nigeria Governors Forum, for that great goodwill message. We would now like to call on Mr. Christian Giacomini, the Chief Executive Officer, Mold Finance International, who joins us from his operational base in United Arab Emirates in Dubai. And the DataPro and Mold Finance have formed a partnership, and this partnership is built on technology and is revolutionizing the entire capital markets and credit rating agencies' responsibilities. Mold Finance is the #1 fintech rating agency in Europe and has spread their businesses across the world. And this partnership with DataPro has produced a major tool for credit rating known as Tigran for DataPro, which is used across sectors. Join me in welcoming Mr. Christian Giacomini to deliver his goodwill message.
Very good afternoon, and thank you very much. Thank you to all of you and DataPro, to the founder, friend, and CEO, Mr. Abimbola, to have me today, and to the audience and all the high-level speakers that we are joining us today. I'm Christian Giacomini, CEO of Mold Finance International, a Mold Finance company with a target to bring Mold Finance know-how, expertise, and products at global level with main focus on emerging markets. Mold Finance is an Italian-based company incorporated in 2009, licensed from 2016 from the European Security Market Authority to issue solicited and unsolicited ratings to corporates and banks. Mold Finance is actually a market leader in Europe in the fintech sector, and more in general in the digitalization and modeling of corporate financial behavior and rating using artificial intelligence and machine learning, and counting today more than 500 million companies scoring. Mold Finance International is actually mainly focused into bringing Mold Finance solution into Middle East and African market, where authorities, regulators, lawmakers are putting a lot of efforts to allow to the infrastructure of the financial industry to constantly improve, and where the percentage of the GDP based on micro, small, and medium enterprises is progressively growing. As said, we are really focused on African market, and Nigeria being one of the biggest engine of the economy in the African continent is for us a prioritized country to be. We are honored to partner in the local market with DataPro from April 2022. We retain that the combined expertise, Mold Finance, DataPro, two leaders, rating agency in different territories, can bring into the local market and considerable support for institutions, banks, investment funds, large corporates, insurances that operate on daily basis with micro, small, and medium enterprises, providing defaults, increasing profits, and managing properly risk at single and portfolio level, leveraging quantitative data as financial when available, and qualitative data and public web data. Thank you very much. My best to all of you, and let us try to do all together big efforts for the development of an incredible market as Nigerian market is. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Christian Giacomini, CEO, Mode Finance International, who joined us from Dubai, the United Arab Emirates, where he has operational base. Okay, now we move on to the next item where we will be looking at the keynote address. The keynote address is going to be delivered by a professor of financial markets and institutions, as well as financial risk management at Politecnico di Milano in Italy. He is no other person than Professor Marco Giorgino. Professor Marco Giorgino is the scientific director of FinTech and InsurTech Observatory at Politecnico di Milano in Italy, and he joins us from his base in Italy. He will be talking to us on the topic, the reshaping of the financial industry, the major role of FinTech and data for rating. Please join me in welcoming Professor Marco Giorgino.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everybody. It's a pleasure for me to be here with you today, and I would like to thank you very much for your invitation, to thank DataPro for this very important meeting, to be here to hold a keynote address. As was already said, I will talk about the reshape of the financial industry, and in particular, talking about what's the major role that can be played by FinTech in many segments, many activities of the financial intermediation, but in particular in the credit market through the usage of data for rating, for the credit risk assessment. My presentation will be based upon three main points. First of all, I will talk about a very brief overview about what's the FinTech market. If we can go ahead with the presentation, we can see the three main points on which I will focus my attention. So definition and key numbers worldwide. Secondly, I will talk about what are the main players in this market that today is changing a lot. And the third step would be the more, let me say, the most important for us today, that would be based upon the main applications where loans, credit markets, and rating are among the most meaningful. So starting from the definition, you know, FinTech is a combination between two main words. First of all, finance, financial markets, and financial institutions. And second, the role of technology, in particular, the digital technology. We have a lot of definition about what's the meaning of FinTech, but what I would like to point out today with you is if we want to work in this field, we need to understand how FinTech can go ahead, what are the main impacts coming from that. And FinTech is not only the combination between finance and digital technology, but is among the most important innovation drivers for the whole financial industry. So FinTech is a powerful driver of innovation in the financial services market, and fintech can improve advances in technology that have the potential to transform the provision of financial services and credit and loans activities in particular. As you know, the combination between technology and finance is not a very recent story, because we can go very back in the past, and we saw already a combination of the two. What's the main difference today? The powerful coming from technology, how digital technology can really make a lot of things. And today we will talk about data, big data, and how through big data is possible to improve our ability to make finance and to be competitive in this field. Now, fintech is changing the shape of the financial industry, working in particular on the ecosystem. Today, you mentioned before my beginning, how it's important to make partnerships. Well, fintech is leading us to understand how innovation can be possible just through a cooperation and a collaboration among different bodies that are involved. And we have plenty of categories that are in the fintech ecosystem. We have fintech startups, so young, very innovative companies, digitally native companies, as Mod Finance, for example, is. Then we have the developers of technology, and so who is able to improve through the usage of technology, where the magic words are big data, cloud computing, cryptocurrencies, machine learning, artificial intelligence. Of course, we will not have a substitution, so artificial intelligence will ever substitute the human intelligence. But in finance, we have to combine together what's the power coming from artificial intelligence with the ability of the human factors to manage systems, to manage processes, and to govern the financial activity. A third part of the ecosystem is represented by customers. And we saw under the pandemic phase how customers were very, very challenging to financial operators to improve their ability to go ahead, to be competitive in this landscape. Then we have incumbent operators, traditional financial institutions, and last but not least, we have financial regulators. And it's very important to understand what is the cooperation among operators and financial authorities to improve the efficiency, the effectiveness of the market through the digital innovation. Now, going ahead, numbers very fastly here, we see in this figure and in the following slide how the phenomenon was very relevant in the last years. We had a very huge improvement in 2020, 2021, but we are seeing how some numbers are generating a slowdown in the first months of 2022. So probably the phenomenon is under a consolidation phase. We can see this through looking at numbers related to the funding, for example, on the left side of this figure. Looking at what kind of deals are done on the right side, we see how the main areas in the world are going up. They went very up now. They are living a consolidation phase. So we can jump to the following slide and the following again. So we can go ahead, please. And we go ahead, thanks. And the following slide is to introduce what are the main fintech players. So what we see in this market, we see, and this is the main message that I would like to share with you this afternoon, that we need to share experiences, and it's very important to understand how innovation strategies cannot be improved without a cooperation. The most important part of the cooperation is coming from the incumbent operators, the traditional banks, traditional commercial banks, so traditional financial institutions on one side, and fintech operators on the other side. This figure is coming from the literature. You know, we have also an academic perspective, not only a professional perspective in our university. Politecnico di Milano is the most important technology university in Italy, the biggest one, and is among the first 10 technological universities in Europe, and we keep a very academic approach, trying to go in deep about this phenomenon. And we see how innovation strategies led by incumbent operators are mostly related to three different perspectives. Make, so making something in-house. Buying, so buying some solutions from outside. But the third way is probably the most relevant and most with highest perspectives in future, that is coming from the cooperation. So not a competition between incumbent and fintech, but a cooperation. And for example, an incumbent bank could be very, very interested in buying or in developing some solutions for the rating. So for the credit risk assessment, cooperating with a fintech that is very strong in big data, very strong in collecting information that are not necessarily homogeneous, that can be meaningful if we put them together. So make, buy, or partnerships is the third way that is more interesting if compared with the other one. Now, please, if we jump to the third part of my presentation, the time is going on, so I want to be clear also on the third part. Please go ahead again. And we make a deep dive on the loan activities, so fintech applications. You see, we have a lot of fintech applications in the payments area, in the insurtech area, compliance or regtech in general, sustainability, asset management. But here today, we are to talk about lending. The frontier of the digital innovation on the lending market is very, very interesting. And the role of data, the role of big data in this field is crucial. Who will be able to govern big data on this field will be successful in the future. Now we can consider in the following slide, what is the process of the credit management? We can go ahead again. Okay, so let's talk about this. Let's focus our attention on this, the digitalization of the lending process. As you see, we have different steps: need identification, recognition and pre-selection, anti-money laundering and documents in general check, credit scoring and decision, negotiation and sale, and post-sale services. So this can be a design of a common process in the lending market. The role of data across the process is crucial. We need data for the need identification of the customer, so to understand how to profile the customer and how to understand what is or her need or its need if we are talking about a company, a business. So it's important to make the profiling, and the usage of data for making the profiling is really very, very important. This can lead us to a pre-selection of what are the target customers. So what are the customers to which we can propose our commercial offer. Then we make a lot of checks because we have to be sure about what we have in front of us: anti-money laundering, compliance, a know your customer authentication. But the key role, the key step that I would like to point out this afternoon is the fourth one, where we read credit scoring and decision. We need providers that will be able to give who lends money information about the riskiness of the counterpart. When the loan is decided and is given, and in the following phases, the monitoring activities. I can assure you that today, this is one of the most important points, also from the regulatory standpoint. Here in Europe, we have a bank authority for the supervision that is European Central Bank, and the central bank in Europe, as any other supervisors in the world, are very careful to understand how who lends money, who is authorized to lend money on the market, banks, commercial banks, and other operators like these, are able to monitor early warning signals, early warning information. What's the role of data and big data to anticipate what can be a deterioration of the ability of the borrower to repay the principal and to pay the interest and to be in the condition to pay what is expected for in the future. This is a main point for the quality of the assets, for the riskiness of the activities, and for what is the sustainability of an incumbent or in general of a bank that lends money in the future. Then we have negotiation and sale and post-sale service. If we go ahead in the following slide, we see in particular on the left side we need daily, we need time by time, what is the quality and what is, as the opposite, the riskiness of the body, private, retail, small business, or corporate in general that is borrowing money. This is a frontier today. Loan and credits are very old in the financial intermediation, but today, what includes the main factors for the competitiveness and for the effectiveness is the ability to use data that, pay attention, are not necessarily conventional data, not necessarily are quantitative data. We need data that could be used in simultaneously, that are qualitative and quantitative, that are conventional and not conventional, to have in very few moments, very fastly, what's the information related to the counterpart that we have in front of us, and that is our borrower. So I conclude my speech, my keynote address, giving this message. Without a cooperation with technology providers, with digital companies that are very involved in this field, so that are strong in big data analytics, artificial intelligence, that are strong in Internet of Things, that are strong in machine learning, it will be very difficult to be competitive, and it will be very difficult to make innovation, and it will be very difficult to integrate what are these very innovative factors on one of the most traditional activity that is represented by the credit intermediation, so lending money on the market. I thank you very much for your attention, and again, I thank you all for invitation for being with you this afternoon. Thanks a lot again.
Thank you very much, Professor Marco Giorgino, a professor of financial markets and risk management, a man who has also held positions at the board, serving as director and chairman of some boards of major companies across the world. And he has also opened the space for us to let us know the importance of big data and technology, and then the role of credit rating. But in the middle of that there's need for partnership, for collaboration, in order to release the needed funds and resources that will build a virile economy. Once again, thank you, Marco Giorgino. Now it's time for us to look at the trending issues, and to help us dissect that is no other person than Mr. Fahim Ahmad. Mr. Fahim Ahmad joins us from Bahrain in Middle East. Mr. Fahim Ahmad is the president of Islamic International Rating Agency, IRA, which now has mandates in about 11 Islamic countries. He has also played a major role and served at management level in various international companies and in fields of credit rating. Mr. Ahmad is also a member and a founding member of Association of Credit Rating Agencies in Asia that is headquartered in Manila. Mr. Fahim Ahmad also serves on the board of directors of CRIXL Bangladesh, a company which he founded in 2003. He is going to be talking to us on the topic, how Sukuk bonds can improve Nigeria's infrastructure. Please join me in welcoming Mr. Fahim Ahmad.
Thank you very much. Can you give me the share screen so that I can share my presentation, please? Okay, thank you very much. So it would be, okay, the next slide, please. I'm very thankful to the organizers, and good afternoon, good evening, because I'm very late here, and I'm sure my colleagues from Europe is in the afternoon zone. And it's a wonderful idea to have a seminar from Nigeria, originating from Nigeria. So my presentation is divided into three areas, where I will just give you a very quick background on the Sukuk issuances, what are the trends, then how the infrastructure can be developed in Nigeria, which was the key notes, and both the regulatory officials, Mr. Ibrahim also pointed that out. And then I will go into our methodology of Sukuk and ESG, how we are now getting into these areas as an international rating agency. If you look at the slide, you can notice that Sukuks are growing at a very fast pace in the global economy, because we have 56 OIC countries where the Islamic finance is going to be entrenched in coming years, and some of the countries are very far ahead, and they have like Malaysia, Indonesia, Pakistan, then Middle East countries, Turkey, where they are putting up the Islamic finance as a parallel economic system. So now if you can see, the last year, a couple of years back, only $174 billion of Sukuk emerged. And if you could look at the Qatar, Indonesia, UAE, Saudi Arabia were the leads countries where this originated. Next slide, please. Next slide. It is just, again, I just wanted to emphasize that which country is the biggest issuance in the last year. In a couple of years back, Indonesia was leading, and then Saudi Arabia, and then Qatar, and then Pakistan were among the major players in the international market. Next slide, please. Now, if you can look at what is the breakdown of outstanding Sukuk as of December 2020. Bangladesh has 361. I put up this slide because I wanted to make a point that I saw Nigeria also had some kind of about $900 million of outstanding global Sukuk over many years, but as of 2020. So that was my point here, where if you can see, Malaysia is the lead with $281 billion Sukuk. Next slide, please. So now this is by the issuer status. Corporates were 136 billion, and then FIs were 63 billion. Quasi sovereigns were there. Sovereigns were the very active players, 323 accessing the global market. Next slide, please. Green Sukuks are not also far behind. Next slide, please. Yeah, if you can look at the history of the green Sukuks in the global market, you can see it started in 2017. 2018 was very big. Pre-COVID was a very big, healthy with 3.5 billion coming in, and then it little tapered off. But what I know right now, Indonesia, Pakistan, and UAE are very, very actively pursuing green bonds and putting up the ESG concepts, and because they are signatory to SDGs of the UN. Next slide, please. Just to give you ESG, I think everybody would know, and Brother Ibrahim also pointed out about the ESG and the green sukuks and want the requirement in Nigeria. If you look at the ESG market, it is now $2 trillion in euro, and now it may reach about 7.6 trillion by next 3 years. And if you look at Islamic Development Bank, it is very proactive. It has come out with $1.5 billion sukuk in 2020 for healthcare and supporting SMEs. So that is part of the SDGs of the UNO, in line with the SDGs. Now, they also issued a sukuk of $1 billion in 2019, green sukuk for energy, transportation, and pollution control in member countries. UAE Ittihad, the Airways, is the first transition 600 million sukuk, because the transition risk in green sukuk is very pronounced, because by 2030 we have to meet certain regulation, certain benchmarks, and by 2050, as you all know, that we have to be carbon neutral. And Indonesia issued 2 sukuks in 2020, 200 million, and they were oversubscribed, by the way. Next slide, please. And now I think it's a very fertile land, Nigeria, because as we saw, there are a lot of demand and a lot of transparency is coming by their states putting up their financials, as I learned today. And I think that's a very good opportunity for the Islamic finance to come in and help in Nigeria capital markets. If you look at the breakdown in 2020, the total sukuk was about 168 billion, and Nigeria had one sukuk outstanding for $300 million. It is just I'm just trying to make a point where Nigeria stands. Next slide, please. And if you look at $1.4 trillion, which have been issued since 2001, I'm talking about last 20 years. Nigeria had issued 6 sukuks with $1.2 billion issuances. So I think it is quite an active player as far as the history goes. But if you look at $1.4 trillion, it's a very small pie where Nigeria can access. It means Nigeria can access the international market and it can develop the local market. Next slide, please. So what are the opportunities? Opportunities are, next slide, please. The PPP projects, which was just pointed out by the regulators. And that becomes a very important aspect, I believe, in the emerging markets, because I work in 15 countries now, Pakistan, Bangladesh, Iran, and I think Iran will also be coming up with the PPP project, the regulations. I'm working very actively in Iraq and Libya to develop the PPP projects, the regulations. In Pakistan, we have a very advanced system on PPP projects. We do many highways, and right now we have a very big project, the Tharkol, which is under a PPP project. It's $1 billion project. And now we are talking about sukuks can be long-term, short-term, like CPs. And we have a very big experience in bringing out commercial papers in sukuks. And that could be a very big, we could play a very important role with the partnership of DataPro in Nigeria. And the tier 1, tier sukuks are coming out by the financial institutions. That's a very important area where the Islamic financial institutions have issued millions of dollars in MENA region, in GCC countries. So now what kind of green projects we can bring in, where sukuk can also help you and the investors can really line up, and going forward, green is becoming the important factor for the mutual funds also and the investor base also. So energy efficiency and installation of these smart meters. Then renewable energy, very big area we can bring in. Transmission and distribution systems that we can curtail losses and the line losses, what we say, and the distribution system. And then we can help in grid connections, specific sukuks for the energy sector and connecting them to the renewable energy areas. And then affordable housing. These are the SDGs I'm talking about. And we will meet at the same time, we are addressing the SDGs benchmarks also. And then education and skill trainings, the human development. That is a very, very important part of the social development goals. And then the sustainable and food supply. Right now, in this year, food supply, and look at in the next couple of years, and the floods and the environmental destabilization. Pakistan had a very long, very bad floods. Look at Ian, which has destroyed. It was a grade 5 hurricane in USA and Florida area. So I think food supply can also become a very important part of the SDG goals and SDGs. We as ERA, we have a very specialized rating mechanism, and we have developed this, and it has become a very important area for our rating.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Fahim Ahmad. I think there's a little bit of glitch, but I think it's done justice to the work. He has really opened up the space to let us know the benefits that are also leading in Sukuk funds as one of the alternatives of funding infrastructure, and which they have been doing in other parts of the world. Okay, now moving on, we will go to the next one. Of course, we have the next presentation, which is on the imperatives for a Pan-African Association of Credit Rating Agencies. This has been mentioned by Mr. Caro during his presentation, that at the African Union, they were talking about the need for a Pan-African credit rating agency. And we have with us now Mr. Stanislas. Okay, I understand we need to move this to the back. So let's now go straight to the panel discussion.
Hello? Hello?
We will not go to the panel discussion. On the panel will be moderated by Prince Oladele Adeoye, and the topic for the panel discussion is unlocking infrastructure assets opportunity for pension managers through credit rating. Prince Oladele Adeoye is the Chief Rating Officer and Executive Director of DataPro Limited. He will be moderating this section and also introducing the panelists and handling issues around it. Please keep the questions coming. Make generous use of the chat box, the question and answer box. Push in all your questions there, and those questions will be answered at the end of the panel discussion, which Prince Dele Adeoye will be handling. Please join me in welcoming Prince Adeoye for the panel discussion.
All right. Thank you, our viewers. I want to welcome you especially to this segment of the webinar. It is my pleasure to introduce panelists to you. First, I have Mr. Peter Ashade of United Capital PLC, ably represented by Dr. Gbadebo. Dr. Gbadebo, you are welcome.
Thank you.
All right. I also have on this panel Mr. Olufemi Odukoya, the MD of Crusaders Sterling Pension. Mr. Olufemi Odukoya, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Prince Adeoye. Thank you for having me here.
All right. And so I have my brother also on the panel, and that is Mr. Suru Daniel, the MD of Afrinvest. Good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon, Prince Adeoye and everyone. Thank you for having me.
All right. So as the moderator had said, we want to have a quick discussion around unlocking infrastructure asset opportunity for pension managers through credit rating. And we have a couple of focus that we want to use in directing our discussion. However, I would also like our viewers, if there are questions that agitating their mind, we will be checking the Q&A from time to time to see if there are questions for us. Before we progress, I'd like to speak first to the supplier of the fund. If you look at the panelists, you observe that we have the supplier of fund and the users of fund right here. So permit me to be speaking first to on the supply side. That is Mr. Olufemi Odukoya. Can you just quickly speak like 1 minute to our discussion points before I move to other member of the panel? 1 minute.
Okay. Again, thank you for the privilege and the honor to be here this afternoon. Special thanks also goes to DataPro. Okay, so good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'll just take a cue from the speech of Mr. Yuguda. He said something in the speech. He said, infrastructure is the livelihood of any economy. And that for me is very apt, even for this meeting. Okay, infrastructure development has a way of ensuring quality of existence for the people, and they're also improving the economy. The way economy runs, infrastructure is expected to be the foundation upon which any economy should naturally thrive. So for me, this topic is apt and it's just at the right moment. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And so let me go to the users of the fund, starting first with Dr. Gbadebo. Your opening remark, please.
Okay, thank you very much. On behalf of Mr. Peter Ashade, Group CEO of United Capital PLC, he extends his apologies for not being available. But I'm MD Investment Banking at United Capital, and I'm representing him here. Thank you very much to DataPro for having us here. I think the subject matter is so critical. The speakers earlier today have done enough justice to this, and at this session we'll speak further to it. Infrastructure, just like Mr. Odukoya has also said, is critical for any economy. I think that cuts across both the hard and soft infrastructure that is needed for livelihoods across countries. The discussion so far has already touched on the key points. I guess our discussions will go deeper in each of on the key things on how we deepen infrastructure development in Nigerian environments, and it's the infrastructure deficits, from numbers we have, about $3 trillion infrastructure deficit gap. The numbers vary across, and this deficit is across Africa, when perhaps our discussion will center on Nigeria, and that's still valid. I look forward to discussing with my other panelists on this topic, and we'll take it step by step from there on. Thank you.
All right. Okay. Thank you for that. So, Mr. Suru Daniels.
Thank you very much for the opportunity, DataPro, and thank you for taking the initiative to undertake this intervention. I need to say that we're all very aware of what the problem is, but not all of us are doing all that we know to do to be able to solve the problem, which is something that I think DataPro seems to have taken in hand by initiating or making this very topical issue the center of its conversation for this year's intervention. And I think that that is very commendable. As far as we know, and just like my co-panelists and other people who have intervened in these sessions have clearly stated, there is not going to be any meaningful development or that is sustainable without us solving this problem. I think that the topic of this panel particularly then begins to unbundle what the issues could be and how we can kind of debottleneck the process to make sure that we're not just talking generically. Every day we issue all sorts of instruments, we give them names, but what can channel funds into infrastructure to solve the gap that my colleague just mentioned? I think that is what this panel is about, and I really look forward to the engagement and to the opportunity to make some contributions in that regard. So thank you for having me once again.
Thank you for that opening remarks. And I think I always like to go to where the money is in every discussion. So there are quite a lot of numbers out there. And I think Dr. just quoted another figure in his opening remark. I've read of $1.5 trillion that is needed by Nigeria over the next 10 years. I've also read of $3 trillion that is needed over 30 years. How much of this figure do you think our pension fund can take care for us in terms of infrastructure? Mr. Olufemi Odukoya.
Okay, thank you again. We just delve straight because I know we don't have too much time. As we speak, as of 30th July, the total pension assets is about 14.37 billion. Sorry, trillion. 14.37. So let's just say for argument's sake, 15 trillion. That's from inception till 1st of July. Okay, that average is about $34 billion. Okay, so when you situate that side by side, the infrastructure investment deficits, what you just said now, almost $1 trillion in dollars. Okay, you would see clearly that we are still very far. Even if we decide to invest the entire pension asset fund in infrastructure development, it's still not going to it's going to be like scratching the surface. So there's a massive gap between what we have in the pension assets as against what is required to fund investment in infrastructure development. So, and aside that, because pension funds are heavily regulated, okay, you can't just wake up and decide to put en bloc all the monies, saying that because the country is in dire need of infrastructure, you now place all the funds in infrastructure funds. There are no way. Okay, so there are specific percentages that the regulator has prescribed per fund. because we have about 6 funds now, fund 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, all right? Okay, so per fund, depending on the appetite, the aggressive appetite of the contributors, each of those funds have their own prescribed rates in terms of percentages that you could invest in infrastructure fund. For instance, for an example, for Fund 1 naturally is for those who have an aggressive appetite for high returns. Okay, the max you could do there is 10%. Okay, 10% of your asset under management. Even then, you still have per issuer limits. You still have per issue limits. So we are limited by some of the scopes in the regulation. And we should also not forget, infrastructure is long-term in nature, really. And it requires a huge capital outlay. And because of that, people will lose their jobs. So if all the funds are stocked in the infrastructure, the question will be, when they not come, how do you match your assets and liability once they come for payments? So it's a tough one. So the summary is that what you have in pension funds really cannot just suffice to meet that gap, to fill that gap for infrastructure. Albeit the regulation still there that we could invest so much in percentages in infrastructure fund. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. The feeling I'm getting is that relative to the size of infrastructure, the pension asset appears to be not deep enough. But I grew up with this word that half bread is better than none. So the little from the pension side that we can pump into the infrastructure. Dr. Gbadebo, would you like to speak to other impediments to investing in infrastructure, aside the fact that Mr. Olufemi Odukoya has mentioned regulatory constraint and then the size of the fund itself? What are the other impediments to investing in infrastructure from your point of view?
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Adeoye. And I think what Mr. Odukoya said is valid. But if I speak to, so there are two broad things within the infrastructure as an asset class. So first is a non-traditional asset class. So it has, by that on its own, not so many players have an understanding of this asset class. And by default, that just goes to the second bit. You don't have so much of allocation of capital to this asset class. And you can say they go hand in hand. But what I would say, I wouldn't say it's essentially an impediment to that extent, right? But there are two parts to this. There needs to be both the government side and also the private sector side. We have spoken, or we will be speaking a lot around the private sector side, but I think they both go hand in hand, right? The funding needs to come from both sides, and a number of these would be coordinated by the private sector. But I must say that in the Nigerian environment, we've seen an evolution. Over the years, we've seen improvements in how we channel funds, especially from the private side to infrastructure. The gap is still very wide. We spoke of a $3 trillion deficit from an African perspective for 30 years or thereabout. That gap is still wide there. But if you look a few years back, maybe 15, 20 years back, 15 years back or thereabouts, pension funds were not, they were just, you know, the pension funds in Nigerian environment just, the reforms just came, and then we started having proper pension funds that would be accumulated to the point where after a while, with the regulations, you can now start allocating beyond just the plain vanilla investment sectors, equity and debt, right? You now see infrastructure as an asset class is or not some of the alternative asset classes, you know, could be considered. And I think as the economy, not the economy actually, the market, as the market deepens, right, you will find that allocation getting wider. and as returns get more sustainable, it gets wider. And that comes with understanding of the space as well. The project development value chain is slightly different from an infrastructure perspective. And the number of players, as the number of players also increase, I must also mention that in United Capital, we have an infrastructure fund, which is a SEC-registered 150 billion naira infrastructure fund, closed with one, and will be in the market very soon for Series 2 funding. But this and a number of other things we've seen recently, where the number of infrastructure funds also come into play, right, in the market, increases the capacity in the market to intervene, to intermediate in the infrastructure space. And this takes it lower down so that you can, we can fund infrastructure projects of about 1 billion to 5 billion or 10 billion size, unlike some 10 years ago where it was only a few sources, which were, the international banks and the big Nigerian banks that could fund infrastructure along with government. But I think the key point is to run away from problems, but to say that we are evolving and we are widening the universe of sources of funding. So if I take it broadly, you say your internationals will come from your DFIs, your export credit agencies, your international banks, and your domestic banks. Then the capital market in recent times has also done very well. A lot of funding also coming from the pension funds, the asset managers also coming into play. And you see the true bonds, which some states have issued and some governments have also come. Sukuk, as have been mentioned, has also been a very, very veritable tool. And we are seeing that evolution moving up. I think I will hold it there, but just to tweak the comment to say that it's really an evolution we are seeing, and it will continue to get better. Thank you very much.
When you say you will hold it there, it's like you were reading my mind, because I was actually watching the time. but that's good for me. So, Mr. Suru Daniel, Dr. Gbadebo has actually told us that the market is evolving. We expect expansion as time goes on. So, in this expansion, how strategic do you consider the role of a rating agency in following up with this expected expansion as time goes on?
Okay, thank you very much. It's interesting that you asked this question, because I believe very strongly that there is still the level of involvement of credit rating agencies in the capital market and the infrastructure space is still largely preliminary. And this is not because, well, this is due to a lot of reasons. One, I think that there are not enough rating agencies in the country. Two is that, and I stand to be corrected, but I do know that if the rating agencies are supposed to play their credit, even bank credit to infrastructure should be led by assurance works from rating agencies. Look, how important is this? Practically everyone investment block that both Mr. Odukoya and Dr. Gbadebo have mentioned all require rated instruments to invest in. It means, therefore, that even with the limited capital available, the providers of capital are not able to put those monies into investment opportunities that are available if those investment opportunities have not or are not rated, have not been rated, or do not get the investment grade rating. What that tells you is that regardless of, even if you say that the amount of money available in the pension space is not as much as it should be, or in the asset management space, or even in Infraco, which we happen to be one of the new, the asset managers, that's a 15 trillion fund, which would easily add to the capital base available. But in none of those situations, not even for insurance companies, can portfolio managers invest in unrated infrastructure opportunities. So as far as the role of rating agencies are concerned, we think that we will continue to see that that is a very important component of the structuring process and the approval process for the market. Now, do we think that the amount of money available is completely or fully utilized? Again, because I'm an investment banker, I'll speak to the need for proper structures. Because when you say you are subjecting a process or an instrument to rating, the structure determines how comfortable a rating agency will be to give it an investment grade rating. So it also says something about the fact that it's an assurance service, not the same way an auditor's work is, but the investor depends on the rating agents to be able to determine if their interest in an instrument is justified. So to that end, I will just say that credit rating is very critical to capital formation process. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Thank you very much on that. Before I go to other questions, I think I should be asking Mr. Odukoya here. One of our viewers just posted that, and I think it's part of the discussion how they are in the public. There is this, this fear that giving our teeming population the contribution to the pension fund, and if this pension fund are, pumped into infrastructure, a time will come when we will not be able to take care of our retirees. How valid is this statement?
Okay, thank you, Prince Adewi. Obviously, without fear of being contradicted, the statement is not valid. For one, every fund advanced for infrastructure investment, every fund advised even by our regulations, okay, they have prescriptions, they have requirements, they have contingencies that must be met, okay. Mr. Daniel just said something. They must be rated first and foremost. All the boxes must be ticked, okay. They must be rated. They must have some sort of corporate governance. The list is very, very, very deep. And so for any PFA, pension fund administrator, to venture into any infrastructure investment, must have ticked off those boxes. And they are as good as tight. The funds are as good as, the investments are as good as, almost risk-free, all right? Even though we know, all right? So, but it's even the ones we advance to government bonds, all of all these things, they are backed by ISPO. It's not, there should not be any fear to be expressed by anybody at all. We've been borrowing monies out, we've been buying bonds from the day one, 2004, that the funds have been, and there have never been any story around there that PFAs have been unable to pay their retirees as and when due. No. We have prescriptions. There's a particular percentage for money markets, equities, bonds, the other, and every PFA follows to the letter, because we are monitored, we are examined every year, we are monitored daily, and failure, or you go outside what PENCOM has prescribed, such a PFA will be sanctioned. So there's no fear at all, and that's basic truth.
Thank you very much. There is no fear at all, and I hope George Ikenwe, who asked that question, can also hear you loud and clear. No fear at all, because these investments are ring-fenced. Let me go back to Dr. Gbadebo, and I think because of our timing, this will be my last question to you before you give your closing remark. You mentioned that your organization has a 150 billion infrastructure fund. Okay, so that means a couple of experience in terms of the use of rating for that purpose, I want to believe. So what, in your opinion, need to be done more by rating agency to prepare a channel for more funding? Are there more, aside the role that Mr. Suru Daniel has extracted for us earlier. Is there more from your experience that you would have wished a rating agency is able to do more in terms of infrastructure funding? Doctor.
Okay, thank you very much, Prince Adeyeye. I think in addition to what Mr. Daniels and Mr. Odukoya have mentioned, the role of the rating agency or rating or independent rating as it were in infrastructure investing and investing generally cannot be undermined. For these alternative assets, which are, like I mentioned earlier, it's really a specialized asset class, right? It's non-traditional is the right word. The better the understanding of the space of all the different sectors of the mechanics of infrastructure, from project development, the different parties that are required, the different structures that are also in play, the better for the market, the better for the products that will be brought to the table. So I speak as an investment banker, right? Where we structure a number of products, we work with project promoters, and you have to realize that sometimes infrastructure is slightly different from infrastructure development, is slightly different from the regular issuances where a company comes to you, the company already has 20 years experience and all of that. This time a promoter with some limited experience or with some experience will come and put a project together in an SPV structure, right? The rating agency's ability to understand the project structure, understand the underlying business case, right, just gets improved and helps the outcome, helps the ability to attract funding to those infrastructure assets. Of course, the rating agents have to still do their role as independent assessors, knowing that investors will rely on them and their credibility going to the future relies on that, is dependent on all of that. So, and having those different sectors and infrastructure is, or different sectors, so to speak, and having that understanding is probably what you would expect. What I'll say is the additional thing that you want the rating agencies to take on board. And as the market develops, so typically a market will develop from the simpler structures to structures that are a bit not unduly complex, but maybe not as simple as the plain vanilla, but also have the or rather there is the understanding of those structures, right? And you're able to give comfort to the wider markets around those structures, and that allows them to invest in those vehicles. A simple one is the way infrastructure funds have taken off now. A few years ago, investors were not very clear on how the infrastructure funds would play, but now we have about 3 or 4 in the market now, including United Capital Infrastructure Fund, and investors understand those better now. I think just that understanding of the variety of structures is what will be useful for rating agencies to take on. There's something that the guest lecturer, speaker, or that's the professor, I think Georgino, right, mentioned. He really focused on technology, right? The way technology has been used. So I think is very important. Perhaps, although, I think in our markets, you need to build that database before that machine learning and AI will become more useful. That database has to be there. The underlying data has to be credible and all of that. But I think if time is spent, there are just a few rating agencies. There's a collective effort that needs to be used. Sharing of information will be useful as well, and that allows subsequent use of is it data or efficient use of the data that has been collected to improve the rating process. I think the devil is in detail in that regard. But we've seen in this day and age, the layering of technology on everything you do improves the outcome. So I think that's something to also note in addition to what I've mentioned. I'll hold it there, and I hope that answers your question. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Just before we wrap up, I think my last question for this discussion to Mr. Suru Daniel will be the one from the audience. As pension fund being used for infrastructure, someone was asking that among our viewers. Can you take on that?
Thank you for that question. Let me say that practically every bond that has been issued in the Nigerian capital market, where you've had pension fund administrators participating, not less than 70% of the issue proceeds are directed at projects and infrastructure. Okay, so so starting from that block, you will see therefore that what we have practically not done is that we have not admitted that the state intervention in infrastructure occasioned by the issuance of bond instruments is actually an infrastructure play. Okay, and yes, the PFAs have been very significantly involved in that space. Look, the moment the structure works and is agreeable to what the guidelines are for pension fund administrator investments, they have been investing. And when you then bring up the issue that Mr. Duale very well addressed earlier about, what if people resign? Where will their money go? Nobody has said that all of the monies available in the pension fund will be used to buy bond. He mentioned earlier that there is 14 trillion or thereabouts in pension fund under management across the industry today. I doubt that we have up to 25% of that actively in time to maturity bonds in the market today. Because don't forget that some of these bonds are maturing, others are being issued, so there is a replacement to it. Now, the question is, are pension monies in infrastructure? Yes. Are they enough? I don't think so. I think that there could be, there is significant scope to widen the part of pension fund assets available to be channeled to infrastructure. The way to be able to do that in a sustainable and acceptable manner to ensure security of both principal and return is to make sure that the instruments are properly rated, they are properly structured, and they are sold to knowledgeable investors who have the capacity to properly appraise them. And my colleague spoke very eloquently about the need to have well-structured instruments in the market. Bonds are not the real meat of this market or the capital formation process for infrastructure. Infrastructure themselves are supposed to be self-liquidating opportunities. So there are infrastructure funds in the market today, and many more will be opened. Now, apart from the infrastructure funds actually are supposed to provide seed capital for key infrastructure. The balance of the money will come from banks. The other part of the money will come from insurance companies, will come from public sector intervention, because you see, if an infrastructure fund seeds a particular infrastructure, you want to build let's say you want to build the 4th, 5th mainland bridge, an infrastructure fund promotes that. The state government and the federal government bring their counterpart funding. You will then begin to see private sector participants and investors also get involved in that. All of that eventually helps the capital galvanizing process and enhances the amount of capital we are able to channel to this purpose. So when you say PFA money going into infrastructure, is it safe? The answer is a resounding yes. And don't forget that when that money goes in, much more money follows it. And that way we are able to deliver the solution we all need in a way that ensures that the risk is shared. Don't forget that risk rating is a risk management process or a tool, and it helps investors determine whether a particular opportunity is safe enough to protect the various stakeholders involved. When an opportunity gets an investment grade rating, what that says is that independent professionals who are totally not under any kind of influence have looked at it, looked at the capacity to repay and the capacity to ensure that the value promised is delivered, are able, they then give their independent view. Now, when that independent view is given, we think that it should give investors comfort. I think that with a smile on Prince Oladele's face, I need to wind it down, but there is so much to say about infrastructure and the rating process and the opportunities that there are, that this intervention is just going to scratch it on the surface. But I assure you that there is safety, especially when you have independent professionals also certifying that those opportunities are safe. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We would have loved to keep going on and on and on. I know this crop of panelists are very loaded. We could have explored more of the opportunity presented by having these eminent personalities on our panel this afternoon. But time is no longer on our side. And it is on that note that I want to thank especially Mr. Olufemi Odukoya. We want to thank you again for your contribution. Dr. Gbadebo, thank you. And Mr. Suru Daniel, thank you very much. We do hope that we can always count on you next time. So it is on this note, I've checked all the questions from the viewers, our participants, and I've been able to, merge them together where necessary and present it as a question to our panelists. And I believe they've done justice to that. So it is on this note that I want to yield the floor back to our moderator for this webinar, Dr. Wentz Nwoga. Thank you. Doctor, over to you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Prince Oladele Adeoye, the Chief Rating Officer and Executive Director, DataPro Limited. Along with your panelists, you've done a great job dissecting the topic on unlocking infrastructure assets opportunities for pension managers through credit rating. Yes, you've been able to establish the importance of credit rating as a risk management tool. As market players from both supply and demand sides, you've also seen the need that players must come together to unlock the huge financial resources that are available in order to deepen infrastructural development. Because without infrastructure, there won't be any sustainable and meaningful economic growth and development. DataPro, as a global credit rating company, has put this together in order to expand the economic growth and development within the country, especially at the challenging time like this. There couldn't have been a better topic than boosting infrastructure development through pension funds investment, role of credit rating agencies. At this juncture, I would now like to call yet again on Prince Oladele Adeoye, the Chief Rating Officer and Executive Director of DataPro Limited, to give the vote of thanks.
Thank you very much, Doctor. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, we are delighted to have you participated in the second edition of DataPro Limited live webinar tagged Boosting Infrastructure Development Through Pension Funds Investment, Role of Credit Rating Agency. We are encouraged by the quality of contributions that we've had today, running from the goodwill messages to the keynote addresses, panelists' contribution. This would not have been possible without your participation. Therefore, I want to specifically thank the DG of the Security and Exchange Commission, Malam Yuguda, ably represented by the Commissioner for Corporate Services, Mr. Boyi Ibrahim. Thank you very much. I also want to thank the DG of Nigeria Governors Forum, Mr. Okaru. Your participation in this webinar has actually dignified what we do here, and we want to appreciate you for that. It is also important that I acknowledge the contribution of our keynote speaker today, Professor Marco Giorgino, and presentations made by Brother Fahim Ahmed, the President of Islamic International Rating Agency, for invaluable contribution towards ensuring the success of the webinar. It is important for me to also note the support that we received from Mode Finance International, the European first technology-driven rating agency, represented by Christian Giacomini. Thank you very much for ensuring the success of this program. Before I round off, I also like to appreciate our team members, those who work tirelessly behind the scene. Not many people will believe that this 1.5 program actually took close to 1 year to put together. I have team members at the back end, DataPro, for that. I want to acknowledge the contribution of our team of analysts, our technical personnel, our IT teams, and others whose contribution, for lack of space, I could not mention one after the other. Finally, we appreciate the gentlemen of the press for pre and post reportage of this webinar. We do hope that we can count on all of you same time next year. So to this, I say thank you all. God bless.
Thank you, Prince Oladele Adeoye, the Chief Rating Officer and Executive Director, DataPro Limited, the global technology-driven rating company. At this stage, I want to now call on Alhaji Sani Mustafa. Alhaji Sani Mustafa is the Compliance Director of Pension Transitional Arrangement Directorate based in Abuja, Nigeria. He will be saying the closing prayer for us.
Assalamu alaikum. I pray that God bless this webinar and direct our rating agencies to also direct the capital pool to go to the best places so that the economy will have a higher carrying capacity to take a lot of our people out of poverty. I believe that with good rating agencies impartially giving a report, our capital will work for us. Subhana rabbika rabbil izzati amma yasifun wa salamun alal mursalin walhamdulillahi rabbil alamin. Amen.
Thank you very much, Alhaji Sani Mustafa, the Compliance Director of Pension Transitional Arrangement Directorate, PTAD, Abuja, Nigeria, for that closing prayer. Once again, I want to thank everyone for the time spent, quality time. It's been quite exciting, revealing, and of course, quite important to all of us. And we've all understood that there is need to have a sustainable infrastructural development, as it will be difficult to have economic growth and development, which will eventually translate to economic well-being for all of us. So it is a win-win for everyone. Once again, I want to thank you for this time you have spent with us, and also encourage you to please visit DataPro's website, datapro-nigeria.net, and also visit the YouTube channel for the webinar recap, which is available from now. It's been streamed on live. So please visit these social media handles, and then let's continue to interact. See you next year, God willing, and bye for now.